Hello weirdos, welcome back to Murder Monday. I'm Becca, and in today's video we are talking about something we haven't covered before. We are looking at a school shooting. April 20th, 1999 in Littleton, Colorado. Really, everything would change for the United States, especially high school students. There was a massive shooting at Columbine High School. 20 years later, the shooting is still totally racked with myth and misunderstanding, and this shooting would go on to inspire a handful of other school shooters. Things like active shooter drills would become the new reality. It would all be thanks to two young men, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. We're going to look at Eric and Dylan individually, how they came together, the shooting itself, and then we're going to discuss some of the lies and myths surrounding this case. Let's get going. Eric Harris was born April 9th, 1981 in Utah, Kansas. His father was an Air Force pilot, and so they moved around a lot. And when they moved to Littleton, Colorado, they fell in love with the area. When his father retired, they stayed. They put down some roots. Eric would spend the rest of his life growing up in Littleton, Colorado. Dylan was a normal kid. He had some trouble fitting in Littleton and kind of finding his place, but he dressed in preppy clothes. He had lots of friends. He was really good at soccer, and he developed kind of a fascination with computers and was actually pretty good at them. As time went on, he started to grow more and more depressed and develop a hatred for the world and everybody in it. He wrote in one of his journals that he wanted to tear someone's throat out with his teeth, which is a little intense. He said he wanted to rip apart a freshman like a wolf, strangle them, squish their head, pop their jaw off, break their arms off. He wanted to show them who God really was. The older he got, the more that feeling of depression and hate turned into kind of a God complex. He felt that he was superior to the people around him. This is the same time that Eric would meet Dylan Klebold. Dylan was a lot different than Eric. He was energetic, although a little introverted. They really had a difference of dispositions, a difference in personalities, but something that they shared together was a growing hatred for their school and their community. Born September 11th, 1981 in Lakewood, Colorado, Dylan was considered gifted. He was really good in school. He did really good on his assignments. He got really good grades, and he was just considered to be really smart. His dad was a geophysicist, and his mom worked with handicapped and disabled people. And when they combined forces and opened up a very successful real estate company, they were sitting kind of pretty. They were upper middle class. He had everything that he wanted. He did not have the life of someone that would later go on and kill 12 students and a teacher and wound like 25 others. He played baseball, he played video games, he was really good in school, he liked bowling, and he liked the Boston Red Sox. He was just your average kid, but there was something dark within him. And when Dylan and Eric got together, that darkness started to develop into something bigger. As soon as they started hanging out, they started to play more and more violent video games. They started to dress in all black. Their homework assignments started to slip. Their grades started to slip. They started to turn in homework assignments that one teacher would say was so violent and vicious that it still disturbs her to this day. The two even made a website where they documented their growing hatred for the school. They even called out people by name from the school, talking about that they wanted to actually murder these people. The media really likes to point at the fact the two really like to play violent video games, but they fail to recognize that Dylan was extremely suicidal and depressed long before the shooting ever even happened. He really hated himself, and it wasn't that he wanted to kill other people, it was that he wanted to die, and he wanted other people to feel his pain. As the depression and the anger was developing between the two of them, they started collecting guns. They even started to film themselves in these little short films called Hitman for Hire. Check it out.
People are always making fun of me. I don't like it. I need some help. Oh! No, you goddamn little bitch-ass piece of shit! Do not!
God damn it.
No, you goddamn piece of bitch-ass shit! Do not even screw with that little kid! If you do, I'll rip off your goddamn head and shove it so far up your...
Go ahead.
Look, I don't care what you say. If you ever touch him again, I will freaking kill you. I'm gonna pull out a goddamn shotgun and blow your damn head off. Do you understand, you little worthless piece of crap?
These videos seem to point to something darker on the horizon. In addition to progressively more angry and violent assignments that they were turning in, people just said that they were creative, that they were good kids. No one recognized a cry for help when it was happening. They became obsessed with Hitler and the Nazi movement and the Third Reich. They, in addition to collecting guns, they started building pipe bombs. They were going down a really dark path, and they were going fast. In 1998, a year before the shooting would happen, the two of them would be arrested for the first time. They broke into a van and burglarized. They were only placed in a diversion program. They did some community service. They went to some court-ordered counseling. The two were released a month early. Dylan was called a bright young man with a great deal of potential. That was in February of 1999. 2 months later, they would shoot up their school. Now, people think that the shooting happened exactly the way that the boys wanted it. April 20th, it's Hitler's birthday. They wanted to start the shooting from within the school. That's actually wrong. They wanted the event to happen the day before because it wasn't Hitler they were looking to immortalize. It was Timothy McVeigh. They worshipped Timothy McVeigh and they wanted to celebrate the anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing, but the drug dealer that they were buying all of their supplies from to make the bombs never showed up. They had to go back to the drawing board, and they decided that since the next day, April 20th, was Hitler's birthday, they could make that work too. They had created several propane tank bombs. Thank God they didn't know anything about bombs, and they were only making these off of the Anarchist Cookbook. But what people fail to realize, and what the book fails to tell you, is that all of those bombs are missing a crucial ingredient to make the bomb work. I know this because my brother has one. My dad had one. I've seen the book. It's missing massively important ingredients. So even if this bomb were to fall into the wrong hands and they created some of the more deadly bombs in the book, they wouldn't actually work, which is what happened. See, the boys, they wanted to put all of the bombs in the cafeteria. That way, they could kill as many as possible, and those that weren't killed by the bombs would be funneled out into the parking lot where they would be waiting, and they would just pick students off as they came out into the parking lot. Then, when first responders arrived to the scene, a bomb placed in the boys' car would then detonate and kill first responders as well, and hinder rescue attempts for those that were injured or survived inside the school. It didn't work out this way. None of the bombs went off. So the boys had to go into the school. At 11 a.m., the boys entered the grounds. They killed 3 students outside, injuring several others before entering the cafeteria. And there they began to shoot people at random. It's another myth that they were going after the people that bullied them and jocks and popular kids, but that really wasn't it. You see, the boys weren't actually bullied. They had lots of friends, and in more cases than not, Dylan and Eric were the people doing the bullying. They just wanted to shoot people, and students who survived the event said that they heard the boys laughing and joking the entire time they were shooting. They were having a great time. They thought this was wonderful. For a little less than an hour, the boys went on a rampage. They ended up killing 12 of their peers, 1 teacher, and wounded 20 other people. The majority of the deaths actually happened in the library. 10 people were killed in the library. When they walked in, they barricaded the doors. They announced that they were going to kill everybody in there and started shooting. One girl was hiding under a table, crying into her hands. Dylan peeked his head around, went peekaboo, and then shot her in the neck. While they were shooting, they were also throwing pipe bombs around the library, trying to do as much damage as possible. And again, they were laughing the whole time. Everybody said it sounded like they were having a great time. To me, it seems like they got a little too far into the character that they were playing in their Hitman for Hire movies. See, there's this thing called latching when someone plays a character too much or they get too into a character, that character's neuroses start to creep in to their actual personality. So if they saw themselves as these murderous hitmen in their clips and they pretended to be those characters constantly, then that's what they were doing. They were just acting out another scene from their movie.
Jefferson County 911.
Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun. He has shot out a window.
One girl was shot 9 times in the chest. Another student wrote on the window, "Help, I'm bleeding." The pipe bombs were set off the sprinklers. There was a ear-piercing scream that was happening from the fire alarms that didn't stop. So in addition to the shootings and the pipe bombs, it's also raining inside the school, and there is a ear-piercing scream that's happening through the entire event. That's where another one of these myths gets kind of broken down. There's a lot of people that said kids are on the phone with their parents, or on the phone with police station or journalists. And although that is true to an extent, we have some 911 calls that came out of the school. It was really hard to hear anybody that was making any calls because the fire alarm was a constant noise throughout the entire event. It's hard to hear yourself think over the screaming of the fire alarm, the gunfire, the explosions, the sprinkler system. It was just complete and utter chaos for 40 minutes. At 1:38, the firing finally stopped and SWAT was able to enter the room. Although they entered at 1:40, they didn't find the boys until nearly 3:30. But the boys were dead long before they were found. 40 minutes after the shooting started, the boys committed suicide. Really, that was the plan the whole time. They really just wanted to commit suicide, is what it was. But they couldn't just do it quietly in a back room. They wanted to make a scene. They wanted everyone to know that they were in excruciating pain on the inside, and they wanted everyone else to suffer too. People like to say that there was no warnings, that they were just these quiet, outcast, lonely boys who were bullied that never gave any signs that anything bad was going to happen. That is complete and utter bullshit. They made videos. They had a website that was found a year prior to the shooting happening where they talked about wanting to kill classmates. They turned in assignments that were filled with rage and violence and bloodshed, and nobody did anything. They're boys. Boys will be boys. But after the shooting happened, they wanted to blame it on bullies, and they wanted to blame it on video games and music and all of this other crap. But none of that is important. What is important is that 2 mentally unstable boys who are not bullied, they were actually the bullies, and they were kind of popular. They had a lot of friends. They had a chemical imbalance that was ignored by everybody. They needed help. They needed maybe medication. They needed counseling, real counseling, not court-ordered counseling. They needed someone to listen to their cries for help, and nobody did, and 13 people are dead. And 20 other people were injured, and hundreds of others were mentally scarred from this. Who knows what the psychological impact was on the people that survived that day? All because 2 boys needed some help. They spent a couple of years asking for help, begging for help, actually, in my opinion, but nobody listened, nobody paid attention, and they took it into their own hands, and because of that, a crap ton of people lost their lives. Whether that's lost their lives because they're dead, or lost their lives because they have been changed forever because of the events of that day. Now, there are some myths that I want to address and make sure that are cleared up by this video, because I feel like the myths and all of the bullshit that gets fed into stories like these takes away from the actual heartbreak and the actual truth of these things. You know, it's not, they weren't some bullied boys and it's all because of the bullies. No, it was mentally unhealthy people needing help that did this. It wasn't, you know, they weren't Nazis who had a collection of guns that are, you know, went and shot up a school. No, it was some boys that worshiped Timothy McVeigh, and they tried to blow up the school and failed. You know, they weren't a member of the Trenchcoat Mafia. The Trenchcoat Mafia were all seniors. They never hung out with the actual Trenchcoat Mafia. And the Trenchcoat Mafia were just a bunch of nerds. They were a bunch of dudes who wore trench coats and liked to play Dungeons and Dragons. They were harmless kind of outcasts that just like to keep to themselves. Dylan and Eric had absolutely nothing to do with the Trenchcoat Mafia, but they wore trench coats and they wore a lot of black. So now a whole group of other kids gets lumped in with these two mass killers, which is wrong. That whole she said yes thing, that's also not true. It is believed that Cassie Barnell was asked if she believed in God. She said yes, and because of that, Dylan shot her in the face. That's not true. That's not true at all. Cassie did die. That's absolutely true. But it wasn't her faith in God that got her killed. It was two mentally unstable boys with weapons. That's what got her killed. And the fact that, you know, she didn't say yes and get shot in the face doesn't make her death any less awful, any less terrible, any less tragic. And we don't need to justify her death. You can't find a reason for why these shootings happen. And you can't find a reason and try and justify away why these kids got shot. She was murdered. It's heartbreaking and it's sad. But trying to explain it away with lies almost, I don't know, cheapens her death somehow. I don't know. Like, her ending was tragic. You don't need to add things onto it. The real story, a girl named Valine Schnurr, I'm 100% sure that I'm mispronouncing that because I've never actually heard that name said out loud, but she was asked if she believed in Jesus. She said yes, and she was spared. They walked right past her. They didn't shoot her. I think a more uplifting story isn't that a girl said yes, she believed in God and was murdered because of it. I think a more uplifting story is that a girl said that she believed in God and was spared because of it. Isn't the story that whether you believe in God or not, isn't the idea that God was there in that moment, able to spare a couple of his followers, isn't that more beautiful and uplifting than someone was killed because of their beliefs? I don't know. There also was not a hostage situation. It was believed that there was because the cops didn't find the boys until well after 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the shooting started at 11. But 49 minutes after the shooting started, the two boys were dead. They killed themselves long before the cops ever even got there. There was no hostage situation. Now, just because there are myths and lies and fabrications that surround school shootings and other mass killings and events like this doesn't make what happened any less terrible. It doesn't make the boys any less guilty. It doesn't make them any less of a monster, but it kind of sheds some light on some untalked about topics. Mental health. We're a little better about it now, but back then it was hard to ask for help. You were brushed aside. You're just kids. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, they did know what they're talking about. Maybe they didn't know how to ask for help. They didn't come right out and say, hey, I'm struggling, I need help. But they wrote about it. They made videos about it. They turned in homework assignments about it. They tried to let people know that something was wrong and everybody ignored it. And what happened, happened. So I guess really the lesson in all of this is that when you see someone struggling and you see someone giving these signs that something is wrong, you should probably listen to them before it's too late. All right, guys, that is the Columbine shooting. I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot to unravel, but I think it's really interesting. I think the psychology behind school shootings is really interesting. A lot of our most recent school shootings were kind of inspired by the Columbine shooting because of the myth that they were bullied. They were bullied, they shot up their school, and now everyone's afraid of them, and they are infamous for the rest of time. But that's a lie. That's not true. They weren't bullied. They were the bullies in most cases. They had a lot of friends. They were pretty popular. They were just mentally unstable. So all of these people that were inspired by the Columbine shooting were inspired by lies. And I'm reading a book now called Ceremonial Violence, which talks about the psychology behind school shootings. And save a couple of stragglers like Columbine, most school shooters have been bullied relentlessly. Whether they're abused at home, they're neglected at home, they're bullied at school, they've been sexually assaulted in some way, whatever the unrest or violence or unhappiness that they're experiencing in their life, they shoot up their school because they want to kill themselves and they can't do it just on their own, so they're hoping the police will do it. And they want to take back some of the stuff that has been taken from them by their bullies. They want to prove that they're not as weak or as little or as fragile as all of the people think they are. So they're doing it to prove something to the people that they're shooting. Ceremonial Violence is a really interesting book. I highly recommend it if you find school shootings interesting and the psychology behind what's causing them interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think. School shootings are becoming more and more frequent. Why do you think that is? What's changed in society or in the way that we rear our children? You know, what do you think has caused this shift in the bully and the bullied dynamic? I'm curious to hear what you think. Also, in the description box, of course, you will find additional information for this case. I will link some of the websites that I use to gather information from. If I can find some good YouTube videos, I will put those in there. Also, my Linktree link is in there. It has my Instagram, it has my Twitter, it has my merch website, it has my wish list, it has all of these things in there. And I'll put my P.O. box in the description box as well in case you want to send me a letter, because I love getting letters in the mail from you guys so much. I'm collecting them and I'm going to make a background eventually. It's going to be so great. All right, guys, stay weird. I love you so much. Regardless of whether or not we're saints, we're still all pretty awesome. And I'm lucky to call y'all friends. Bye.